What it do, Mark Henry here on Your Mark Show, powered and sponsored by Epic Sports Apparel, every play I compete. Live from the Fishbowl Radio Network. It's up. It's Wednesday. We're going to take you home, man. Of course, this is the new time slot, 6 o'clock. We were at 11 o'clock, man, and definitely want to have you tap in with us each week. Live from the Fishbowl Radio Network. But, man, let's go back into last week, man. The big game of the week, of course, was a game we pulled up at, and that was Duncanville DeSoto. Of course, the outcome was in the favor of the DeSoto Panthers. Big win for them, 48-28 over DeSoto. Now, this doesn't mean anything as far as playoff berths for both teams. I think that both teams know that they still have a shot to be in the playoffs. But if you could take anything out of this particular game, it's the outcome, or the thing. The biggest thing out of this game was the coming out party. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time getting my words out today. But the coming out party of Maximus Denson. The junior quarterback played a phenomenal game. 350 yards, 7 TDs. Got his weapons out on the outside involved. Of course, Trent Yancey had a couple touchdowns. Ace and Theus, Zachary Turner, and Manny Ellison as well. But I think this is where we found out, and I've been saying this is where game reps matter. Of course, Duncanville hadn't played a full schedule like everybody else. This was probably, I want to say this was their 4th game. Of course, they had 2 bye weeks, which is unusual for a high school football team to have 2 bye weeks within an 8 to 10 game stretch of a normal season. But you could see him start to see things, and things kind of slow down for him as you see him go through his progressions, getting the ball out quick. DeSoto they did blitz him and try to put a lot of pressure on him throughout the night. But he stood in the pocket. He took some big shots from the DeSoto Eagles defense, which, they were coming. My guy Redmond over there, a junior D lineman, he was in the backfield a little bit. My guy Cortez, he played a pretty good game up front for DeSoto on the defensive line. These guys were coming. They were sending linebackers. They were sending corners. They were trying to really rattle this guy. But Denson stood in there in front of one of the best, defenses that he's going to face in 11-6A, and he took it. And he led his team to victory. I think that was a good sign going forward for what Duncanville wants to do. Duncanville wants to go back to state. They have state championship aspiration. Of course, they want to repeat as the district champion as well. But, Denson played a hell of a game. He really proved that and showed that he's going to be the guy going forward under center, the QB1 at Duncanville. Now, DeSoto on the flip side, I don't think that there's anything to worry about over there. The Eagles will be a playoff team for sure. I thought that Legend Howell also played well at the quarterback position, over 235 yards, a couple of touchdowns through the air. Now, the thing that hurt DeSoto was the penalties. They had 2 touchdowns called back, 2 passing touchdowns called back that were scores that kind of could change the momentum in that particular game. Now, going at the end of the first half, they got a big play from Boobie Feaster and, of course, Sarah Baker, the 2027 running back, who I think is probably one of the better all-around athletes in the state, not just running back. He can play receiver. And the thing that I love about Baker's game is he's just so versatile. He's a Swiss Army knife when it comes to, you can plug and play this guy wherever you want him to play. He had one of the signature catches, I would say, that I've seen this year, and I'm at a game every week, probably two days out of the week, Thursday, Friday, I'm at a game. So I've seen a lot of football so far going into week 8. That was probably one of the better catches, one-handed with a defender draped over him, inside the 10 to just really, give DeSoto the momentum before they went into halftime. And then Boobie Feaster comes down with a monster catch. That's what Boobie does. Like he said, shout out to Boobie Feaster. Shout out to Coach Lee Feaster. I saw his special on Sports Athletes or Sports Stars of Tomorrow. He said, get the ball to Boobie if you want to win. Well, get the ball to Boobie is what they did. He had a couple of big catches, a couple of touchdowns. And I think he, Antron Edmondson, and Baker give Legend House some weapons on the outside that not a lot of teams have around the state of Texas, not just in DFW. So they'll be fine. What they got to do is clean up some things on the defensive side. In the secondary. Now, this was probably one. They're not going to see receivers like this until they get to the playoffs. When you talk about Zachary Turner, Asen Theus, Manny Ellison, and Trenton Yancey. You're not going to see four receivers like that in every time you go out until you get deep into the playoffs. So for what they did defensively, they gave up 48 points, but this was 48 points against probably one of the better receiving corps in the state. Nothing to be ashamed of there. They're going to be battle tested, and they're going to be better down the stretch and headed into the playoffs for that particular reason. Now, sitting in 11-6A now at the top, the Cedar Hill Longhorns. But who do they have this week? They got the Waxahachie Indians, and we'll talk about that game here before the show's over. But I really think that, Cedar Hill's in the driver's seat. They have to win out, and they're district champions. They're the number one seed in this particular district. But they still have to play the big dogs. They start with Waxahachie. They still have to play DeSoto, and they still have to play Duncanville. They've got all of the other guys out of the way. If they can get through that unscathed and undefeated, then Cedar Hill's back. This is the proving ground. And, when you come out of 11-6A, you're battle tested. So when you get into the playoffs, you're not going to see what you see in this district week in and week out with Lancaster, Skyline, Mesquite Horn, and Mesquite, and the heavyweights in that particular district. This is one of the top districts in the state for sure. But I think that, we'll find out what Cedar Hill is going to have this week when they welcome in Waxahachie into Longhorn territory. But, the great game we saw this week, shout out to Maximus Denson. He was phenomenal, and I think he showed that he's going to be the guy. He's only a junior, so he'll be back next year on the center for Duncanville, and he still got some guys to work with. And if you know about anything about DFW football, Duncanville's loaded when it comes to the 28, 29 class and some of the middle school classes that are coming up. So, the Panthers have talent on the way. They got some guys in the microwave that they're ready to bust out. You know what I'm saying? So he's going to have some talent to throw to. But defensively for Duncanville, Landon Barnes played an outstanding game, got a couple of sacks, timely sacks at the right time. There was a fumble recovery by Cryer. I think he had a big fumble recovery in the second half as well. But Victor Lincoln, the cornerback, he came in the second half. He was out the first half. He came in the second half, and I think that was really a big difference for Duncanville defensively. He was able to come in and make some plays, cause a fumble, almost got his hands on a pick, couple of pass breakups. His ability to tackle and guard one of the better receivers in the country. He played a very, very good second half, clean second half, one of the better on-ball defenders, cornerbacks that you're going to find in the state of Texas. He's an Arkansas commit as well. But, Duncanville's defense came up big in the second half. Braylon Edwards had a couple of big stops as well from the safety position. So this is what Duncanville wanted. This is what they wanted to do. I think, some people thought, DeSoto, with the momentum from the Waxahachie game, that they were going to go in there and just, pound the rock and just bully Duncanville around. Well, Duncanville said, hey, no, we're not having that. That's the reason they say lock the gates. This is what you do. This is what you have to do when you go into Duncanville. I can't remember the last time Duncanville lost a game at home. I think I have to look it up. But, I usually go to one or two Duncanville games a year, depending on who they're playing at home. So I can't remember the last time they lost a home game. I can remember. The last time I saw them lose a game, that was to Mater Dei, and that was a few years ago. But that's a team out of state. In state, I don't remember them losing to anybody at home. But that was, the last time I saw Duncanville lose at home was to Mater Dei from California, and that was like 45-3. I happened to be at that game that year, and I think Duncanville went on to state to play North Shore, if I'm not mistaken, that year. But the Duncanville Panthers will be fine. I think DeSoto will be fine, and that was a big game that those two particular teams came out and they played well. I think that it was 31 players that have offers from colleges in that particular game. So there was college coaches on the field. There was big time media, of course, in the building, and that was probably one of the best atmospheres I've seen this year. I think the North Crowley DeSoto game earlier in the year, North Crowley was a pretty big atmosphere, but the Duncanville Waxahachie atmosphere as well. So as far as regular season games, now when it gets to the playoffs, it just gets bigger and bigger. So we definitely saw some of the best football that we're going to see. And I think going forward, both of these teams will be playoff teams. Now, who wins the district? That's to be seen. Cedar Hill still has to play Duncanville and DeSoto, so both of those teams kind of have an inside track. If they can knock off Cedar Hill, then that vaults Duncanville in front because DeSoto beat Waxahachie, and now Duncanville beat DeSoto. So if Duncanville takes care of business against Cedar Hill, then they got the upper hand of going into the playoffs as the top seed. So I mean, you really got to look at that as something that's real special for those guys, and that's the reason that they play the game. That's the reason that they're one of the better teams in the state year in and year out as they produce. But let's talk about a few scores from last week. Bowie takes care of Martin 56-43. South Grand Prairie, I saw something a little earlier on the internet that said, is South Grand Prairie a contender? Well, they're undefeated. Josiah Lucas is having a phenomenal year. Kate Wallace is playing well. Listen, you gotta look at SGP as a contender to make the playoffs for sure. Now, whether they're a state contender, that's to be seen. The Warriors hadn't been undefeated in a long time. They've always been a playoff team, but just hadn't been undefeated. But they're playing at a high level. I had a chance to see Josiah Lucas and Kate Wallace. Shout out to True Buzz right before the season at the True Buzz Media Day, and they were pretty confident in this team. And to see them, go undefeated and beat a young Lamar team that has some young talent over there, 53-0. That's saying something. It also says they got some guys on defense. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely can't say that the Warriors are not a contender. I think they're a continued contender to win that district. They're in the driver's seat right now. Whether they make it to state, they have to get to the playoffs. And they haven't been, as a program, they haven't made a deep run in a few years. But, I mean, the way they're playing, you can't deny that they're a good team and that they're a team that could possibly push, 2-3 rounds deep in the playoffs, especially 3 rounds deep. Depends on the matchups. When you get to the playoffs, the matchups have to match up each week. It's a toss-up to where it's going to be played, who's going to be in it, based on the seeding coming out of these districts, the area round. It's always a step up in competition. So, but I think the Warriors are a team that you want to keep the eye on. You know what I'm saying? Argyle gets a big win over Seguin, which was coming in. Seguin was coming in with some momentum there, but Argyle's been there and done that. Seems like since they had the early season loss at home to Lone Star, they've kind of righted the ship and got their footing. They've got back into the winning mode. McGuire Gashmerson is playing at a high level. You got Julian Caldwell, Braden Bach, and those guys over there. And that defense, holding Seguin, which has got some talent, to 24 points is saying something. So I expect the Argyle Eagles to be right back in the playoffs. They could, if they finish out, their district title champs. Hey, you never know what happens. The Eagles lost in the semifinals to eventual state finalist South Oak Cliff last year. So the 5A D2 is just loaded with good teams. You know what I'm saying? Melissa, Anna, Walnut Grove. You gotta run it the gamut with 5A D2. Of course, you got South Oak Cliff, you got down south Iowa Colony, and you got Randall. So you got Port Neches Groves out in southeast Texas. So the amount of talented teams in the 5A D2 bracket it rivals any bracket or any division in the state of Texas. I really think that you can find any team in here, the ones that we just named, could be contenders for a state title. Carter gets a big victory over Roosevelt. Here's a shocker, or I would say upset, at least in my mind. Mansfield took care of business against Crowley 28-14. So what that does is put the onus on the Crowley Eagles. They got to win it. They got to win out to get in the playoffs. They had last week, the week before, they lost to Boswell by a point. So we got to see what's going to happen with the Crowley Eagles. I think Coach Lynn and company over there, they're definitely a team that can get right here these last couple of weeks as we head into Week 8. They got my guy Tay Ellis, one of the best receivers in the country. Kenyon Cotton's been playing at a high level at the running back position. And you got Big Country over there on the offensive line. They got to put it together. They're going to have to win, and that starts this week because they got 2 losses in a row. And then they got, of course, rival North Crowley at the end of the year. And so that's not going to be an easy task. But the winning starts this week for Crowley. They're on the hot seat. because if they don't get this one, they probably pretty much eliminated from the playoffs. Guyer gets a big one over Hebron, 44-16. Now, the Guyer Wildcats are battle tested. We talked about them the last couple of weeks, and last week they took on Alito early, and they also took on a very good North Crowley team that they lost to by 1 point. Since then, they've been rolling, but they're battle tests. This is why you play these games. This is why you play these type of games early in the year to test your mettle. By the time you get to district, you're rolling. Now they got to take on Flower Mound Marcus, and then on October 31st, it gets real spooky. They take on Louisville, who's one of the better teams in their district, undefeated, playing great football as a team. That 2027 class at both of these schools, when we talk about Guyer and Louisville, some of the best junior classes in the state at these particular schools. It's gonna be tough for both teams to win out. Of course, Louisville's got Capel this week, which is also another challenger in that district. But Guyer's already taken care of business against Capel, so Louisville's they're on upset alert this week. You definitely got to know they're on upset alert. This is a team that's been playing well, but they go to Capel this week. But we'll see what happens with that. But I like what Guyer's doing. Carter Morgan is a guy that you need to know over there. He's a sophomore quarterback, wide receiver. He can just do it all. He's a Swiss Army knife. He's a reason that Guyer's been successful as well. Of course, Zephyr Cry, they've been rotating back and forth. But, Morgan gives him that explosive ability as a runner, very athletic. This is a guy that, not a lot of people knew about coming into the year, but we all know about him now. If you follow high school football, the Guyer Wildcats definitely have a playmaker in him, and he's a guy that's going to be at the forefront of whatever they do offensively. Of course, you got Corbin Glasgow, and Caden Cobbs has been running that pill, and he's an Illinois commit. Now, he plays on both sides of the ball, but he's been, a machine at that running back position for Guyer this year. Of course, you got Kyron Haywood, Darren Neal, and Zane Rowe up front, and as well as Garcia, the linebacker, as well. And shout out to my guy Paxton Williams, had a big breakout game last week at the safety position. He's a guy in the 2027 class that's starting to buzz or starting to get some real looks. He should have some colleges looking at him as the season goes on. One team that we need to talk about, and we're going to talk about them a little bit more before we get off today, is the Walnut Grove Wildcats. 70-14 victory over Frisco Liberty. They got a big one as they welcome in the Anna Coyotes this week, and we'll talk about that game towards the end of the show. But I really like what Cam Newton, my guy Hayden Cooley over there, and Hayes Hackney, they've been playing at a high level offensively. On the defensive side, Hatcher at linebacker's been playing well. Syracuse at safety. These guys have a really good team. They're battle-tested. You got Christopher Williams in the middle. He's the nose guard or D tackle that kind of controls the tempo or controls everything up front. And when they're in the odd man front, they play a 3-4 defense. What the nose tackle does is he's got to whip that head. He's got to whip that center's head. He's got on the guard and tackle. He can shift, to the strong side or the weak side of it. But, this is a really good team, and they have a chance to really stake their claim as and try to repeat as district champions with the game against Anna this week. But a couple more scores before we move on to this week's games. Byron Nelson gets a big one over Keller. I think that Parker Almanza's been playing at a high level, and Byron Nelson is rolling since they lost to Southlake. Battle-tested. You can't say enough about schedule. And, of course, this team, I think, these teams in Southlake Carroll, Keller, Keller Central, Trinity, they all play a 9-game district schedule. So they only had one preseason game, and then they go right in the district. So that's the big deal in that district. So it's week in and week out you got to win, and Byron Nelson's doing it. We talked about North Crowley earlier. This is a game that we actually pulled up on against Lake Ridge over at Newsom Stadium. Lake Ridge jumps out to a 10-0 lead, and then, hey, the Eagles, Coach Gates, I know what they said over there. It's time to turn up. 62 straight points before Lake Ridge could add another 7 on. This was a game that was dominated in the trenches by the North Crowley offensive line. Keontae Ingram had a great game, as well as Jarrell Smith. I think that these guys at Crowley, North Crowley, know that they can do whatever they want to in the running game. You got two of the best backs in the league, definitely in the DFW, and Keontae Ingram and Jarrell Smith. They're going to get it done because Jarrell Smith had 5 touchdowns against Rockwall, and they ended up losing that game. But I know the Coach Gates and company, they've already put that one in the bag, and they're face forward. They want to get this district title, and they got to go on the road to Weatherford this week, which they should be favored in this game. I think North Crowley runs the table, gets back in the playoffs, and they're probably going to be a number 1 seed and get a chance to host a playoff game. But they're a great team, and all of these guys we talked about. These are playmakers for those guys. My motto is you got to let ballers be ballers, and you got to let your playmakers be playmakers. Get the ball in their hands. Get them something positive going. Get them in the right position to get the ball, offensive guys in space and let them go to work. That's what you do. And North Crowley's been great at that the last few years. And I think the Panthers are rolling again. A couple more scores. Legacy over Boswell, 36-30. Rock Hill gets a big win over McKinney Boyd, 22-11. Terrell, the Tigers are still undefeated. That's another team that you need to look for. 21-14 over Midlothian Heritage. Of course, South Lake Carroll Rose stays undefeated. 66-7 over Eaton. But listen, man, it's one of those things where, you have to play at a high level week in and week out. Everything counts now. The district titles are on the line. Playoff seeding is on the line. This is where you have to really, really, really play your best football. And this is why coaches talk about teams peaking at the right time. When you start to see these teams at this juncture of the season, late in the season, they start to pull away from some of the teams that don't really have, that championship mentality or just the personnel to win. Those other guys start to rise to the top at this time of the year because it's almost playoff time. And it's a small margin of error for you to get into those playoffs. But Richardson takes care of Nimitz, Berkner over MacArthur, Saxey over Garland, Wiley East gets a big one over South Garland, and the Alito Bearcats remain undefeated, 61-0 over Granbury. Definitely. The Alito Bearcats are back. They got a couple of more big games coming up. They got to take on the Richland Rebels, which came into last week as one of the better teams, but Ryan clipped them. They got by him. Quinn Hennigan was phenomenal at the quarterback position. But I think that, Richland will rebound. I know my boy Jason Gibson is ready to roll. He had a pretty good game, just not the games that he's usually been having. But that Ryan defense played well. Cookie Warmate, as Sam used to commit on the D-line, is one of those guys that you need to know about. He was a disruptive guy over there. But listen, man, we're going to pause, take a little small break, and we'll be right back at you, and we'll start talking about Week 8 right here on the On Your Mark Show, powered by Epic Sports Apparel. All right, let's talk about Week 8. I can't believe we're in the 8th week of the season. It just seems like we just started this. Everybody was going to training camp. Everybody was going to 2-a-days, August. And now we're in October, and we're midway through the season. Thursday, let's look at a few Thursday games, a couple important games. Keller Central takes on LD Bell. The winner of this game kind of locks themselves into that 3rd or 4th spot. This is important for LD Bell. This is the time of the year. Bell started out, I think, 4-0 on the season, and they were rolling. Now they've taken a couple of losses here, and they've got to get back rolling. Keller Central's playing at a high level. This is a game you might want to take a look at, for playoffs over in that district that features Ryan, Richland, and Alito. So these guys will be battling for that 4th place probably spot. The loser here is probably out of it. They got to win this game, and I like what Bell's been doing. They got to win this game to stay in it. Now, we talked about getting Guy, and Flowermire Marcus. That's a big game on Thursday up in Denton. Of course, Flowermont Marcus has one of the better quarterbacks in the state, Nussmeyer. We talked about a couple of guys from the Denton Geyer squad. That 2027 class is loaded over there. They have a very, very good junior class. A lot of those guys will be returning next year, but they've got that experience from last year. And I think that, knowing some guys, in that program, guys hungry to get back to that state title game. They feel like, against South Lake Carroll last year, they left a little meat on the bone, and they have to really redeem themselves. They want to make a deep playoff run. This is going to be a good game. Guy can't fall asleep at the wheel on this one. There's no margin for error because you still have to play Louisville in this district. But I think that Guy's going to be, they play very well at home. I know that North Crowley clipped them a few weeks ago in that 1-point game, but I think they learned from that, and I think they learned from the Alito game. You have to get game reps. We talked about this, and I've been talking about this all season. Game reps matter. Game situations matter. When you put your players and these kids in those particular positions to fail or succeed, that's when they rise up and start making these plays and start doing things at a high level. And I think that guys, can't focus on the games ahead. They got to focus on Marcus. Because, listen, Marcus is thinking they can do this. They can beat these guys. They're not going to be shy about it. And I think it's going to be a close game. Frisco, Emerson, and Lovejoy should be a very good game. Lovejoy's got to get a couple of wins, and even Emerson's got to get a couple of wins to get into the playoffs in this particular district. But we'll see what happens. I really think both teams have kind of struggled a little bit here these last 2 or 3 weeks. But we'll see what happens. Another big game on Thursday is Life Oak Cliff and Madison. This is a game we're going to pull up at for sure. Tomorrow night over at Pleasant Grove Stadium. They welcome in Life Oak Cliff. Madison's been one of those teams that's kind of been flying under the radar. Of course, Life Oak Cliff has one of the best freshman receivers in the country in Sakura Cooper Jr. My guy Cam Phillips is playing at a high level. I think that this is going to be a good game now. Again, this is one of those games where Life Oak Cliff, they can't go to sleep at the wheel. They can't get too complacent. They have to seize every opportunity that they have to score. This is probably one of the more high-scoring, fast-paced offenses that you're going to see in the Metroplex. And I definitely think that these guys, know what they're doing and they know what's at stake here, and that's a playoff berth. So the loser of this game is going to be they're going to have a tough road to get back to the playoffs or get into the playoffs. Now Friday, I'm telling you, you can't cut the mustard any deep with these. Mansfield, Legacy, and Mansfield. That's a big rivalry game. Then you got Keller and Euless Trinity. That's a big game for Trinity. They came off a big win last week. Now Mac Lineweaver's got to beat the Mac again. You know what I'm saying? I had a chance to see Trinity in a scrimmage against North Crowley earlier this year, and they played pretty well. I think that they have to go back to doing that. Opening up the field with the passing game. Of course, they're going to be able to run the ball regardless. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what they do over there. But I think that, Trinity's got to really, really, really pay attention to what Keller's been doing because they've been playing at a high level over there. You got McKinney and Prosper. I like Prosper in this particular game just because they have one of the most physical offensive lines in the state. They know how to play some football, some smash mouth football. Can Keller stop them is going to be, the answer to that question. So we'll see. I really think this is going to be a good game, a good test for Prosper as they move into the district title game that lose on October 31st. We'll see what happens, man. I really think that this team, Prosper, they have to win now. They're senior heavy, and all of the prospects that they have on this particular team now, I think that they have to really, really take care of business here and then down the stretch. So that's what you have to do to be in these important games late in the year. Is play well and then, the least amount of turnovers that a team has. And listen, it matters about game reps. I'm not going to say this again. It matters about game reps. These guys have to get some game reps. It can't just be all about practice. But I think that, this is a good game to take a look at. But I like Prosper in this game for sure. Now Northwest takes on South Lake Carroll. Of course, South Lake Carroll's the number one team in the state. You know, they're taking on a very good Northwest team, and they're not going to take them for granted. Shout out to my guy, Coach Raleigh Dodge, for picking up his 100th win. He's 109. That's his losses. He's only lost 9 times. That's a phenomenal record. You know, he's working on his way to being a Hall of Fame coach as well, and he's a Hall of Fame person. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to my guy, Coach Riley Dodge, on the big win to get that 100th victory. Now, Prosper Walnut Grove welcomes in the Anna Coyotes. This is a big game. Could possibly have district title implications on it. You got Walnut Grove with the sophomore quarterback in Hayes Hackney, who's playing at a high level, and then he can turn around and hand it to 2026 running back Cam Newton. I really think that Cam's one of the best rushers in the state. He had over 2,000 yards as a junior. He's working on that again. Cam is a phenomenal running back, and somebody's going to get one of the best steals in this recruiting cycle for 2026, because he can do it all. He can catch it out of the backfield. He's got the speed to take it to the house, and I think that he's going to be, very, very important for Walnut Grove's success as they go forward. Another big game that we're looking at is, we talked about, Cedar Hill, Waxahachie. It's one of those games that you got to see. It's in Cedar Hill. Hatchie's coming off a big game. Jerry Meyer, Colton Brown both had big games. And, hey, you got to look at that. Waxahachie had time to kind of lick their wounds and get ready for this game. It's going to be physical. They're going to have to find a way to block Jalen Brewster from Cedar Hill. And then, listen, Muhammad for Cedar Hill, the quarterback's going to have a pretty good game in order to get this win. So we will see what happens. That's one of the big games on Friday night for sure. We talked about North Crowley traveling to Weatherford, but I think that they should handle Weatherford very well. I think it's just a difference. There's levels to it. You know what I'm saying? That's why, you see me talking to guys after the game, about what happened. It's levels to it. You can't just jump into the fray and think you're going to be the best team early on. Now, as your players mature and your coaches get more familiar with the players, then it's iron opportunity out there to get it done. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a big game as well. A couple more games that we want to look at. I think the Fort Worth Brewer Birdville game is going to be a big game, because they're going to be jockeying for that 3rd or 4th spot. And I think that those teams know that, and you got to win and capitalize on it every time you step on the field. Take no one lightly. You got to get it in. You know what I mean? So, I think that we know that these guys, at Brewer hadn't been to the playoffs in a while. It would be a big win for those guys to make it to the playoffs. But another big game I think that people may not be talking about is Collierville Heritage and Seguin. Bodie Weaver's been playing at a high level. He's the quarterback for Collierville Heritage, and he's been on fire. He's a guy that leads by running the peel, and he's a passer as well. So he's a dual threat. He can do them both. He's committed to UTEP. Now, that's who Seguin's going to have to slow down. Can the Cougars get off the mat and get up? They've lost 2 weeks in a row. They have to have this game. And then in that district, Grapevine takes on the Colony. The Colony is one of those teams that's starting to get hot too as well. But I really like what Collierville Heritage is doing. Bodie Weaver had a phenomenal game. We'll see if Seguin can stop him. Another big game that we're looking at is Ennis and Terrell. Of course, Terrell's undefeated, and Ennis is coming into this game as one of the better teams in that district in the last 5 years. But it's just falling on hard times, and that's what you have to do. And, ain't nothing we can do about it but show love when we see them. You know what I'm saying? But, listen, it's been a great season so far. We definitely have some of the best football coming up this week. Another big game that was down in Houston last week was Summer Creek and Sea King. And Summer Creek had 4 fumbles in the first half, and it was pretty much over early. They made a furious comeback and scored 28 points. But listen, I'm telling you right now, Sea King's playing at a high level. They still have North Shore on their schedule, but North Shore still has to play Sea King, Summer Creek, and Kingwood before the season's over. So definitely, hey, on upset alert for the district title, not just the game. I think that you gotta look at Sea King as a possible favorite. If they can knock off North Shore, they'll be the favorite going into the playoffs. But I really like what they're doing over there, and that's one of the better things. When you talk about high school football. But listen, man, that's all we got for you today, man. Definitely check out the On Your Mark show each week, live from the Fishbowl Radio Network. Also, tap in with us on Twitter at MarkN44, at TXTP Show on Twitter and Facebook. The Instagram is MARC_HEN for the On the Mark Sports Instagram. But listen, man, keep tapping in with us, man. We're going to get this episode up on YouTube today. We'll be on a field near you. If you got any questions about anything, man, tap in with me. Hit me in the DM. I'll definitely make sure I get back to you probably within 12 hours. I usually answer back. But that's all we got for you today right here on the On Your Mark show, powered by Epic Sports Apparel. We're going to holler at you. We'll see you next week. Next Wednesday, we up.